actually with this presentation, usually when I started for myself and for attendees too, I like to start off just kind of taking some breaths and letting all of our parts come into the room so we can be present for the presentation and you guys get out of it what's most helpful for you.
We still have the curry in it.
So just allowing yourself to close your eyes and just take some breaths in. Just noticing your body. Where you're in this room, you're in this moment. And take a nice, long, deep breath in on your next inhale. And then slowly release on your exhale. Let's just do it one more time when you're ready. A nice, big, deep inhale. Opening your eyes. Excellent. So hopefully kind of get centered as well, so I appreciate it. So I think each of you got this book on your way in, maybe? So Sarah Gilman, who's the author, I went through her training. Boundaries are very relevant in my life. One as a therapist, so professionally, and then two, personally. And so I'm not immune to negotiating boundaries, and I don't have it all figured out. So these are some things we're going to step through today a little bit. Normally this is like a 3 to 4 hour workshop, so I condensed it. So if I skip over anything, please ask me questions. Or if you're interested in more, check with Angela about KDOT opportunities, or I also brought business cards. But hopefully you'll be able to get some today that you can carry forward that'll be helpful for you. One more thing I want to point out about the book and why I really enjoy this book. After each section where she talks about sometimes where we ignore our boundaries, there's pages, blank pages for you to reflect on how that plays out in your life and how you ignore your boundary setting. So it's this place where you get to learn and also reflect on what's helpful for you. So there's not a lot of books out there that I see that really dig in that way. So we'll get started. So first of all, what are boundaries? How do you guys define your boundaries? Before you came in today, what did you think this was going to be about? Or maybe what attracted you to the title?
Learning to say no.
Yeah. That's half of it. So the boundaries are the yes and the no. Because we get to say yes with them sometimes. What are some of the things in your life that you're clear or you've said yes or no to that maybe have been challenging or maybe were easy? Like maybe going to your niece or nephew's birthday party, that's easy for me, like, that's fun. So I don't know if you guys have any stories where you were clear, like, that's easy, I got that. Or sometimes they're harder. Maybe I work in a small group and maybe not everybody wants to share right now. That's so the main thing, the takeaway from this part of the slide is to know that your boundaries are made up of yes and no's. Sometimes they're really easy and sometimes they're really freaking hard. And so that's what we're gonna negotiate today and look through a little bit today on what are some of the challenges, why are they important for us, and how do we lean into our boundaries. And Sari does this really great, I always pull this compass visual up for myself. So I'm always like, where's it pointing? Is this a yes? Is this a no? Which way is it gonna go? So I really enjoyed that she gave that visual to it. And I will flag for you guys when we start doing stuff that's in your handouts, because there's some fill outs to put in there, because I firmly believe if you write some things, they maybe lodge a little bit more. So one of the pieces about boundaries is self-care is really important. And as small businesses, where you're wearing multiple hats, business owners, self-care can really get tossed along the side. And we'll talk a little bit more when extreme boundary challenges come in of why that is so important, even if it's just for 5 minutes. So boundaries include motion, self-care, the big boundary challengers and challenges. In that sense, every person needs to develop their boundaries with training. I guarantee you, if not everyone in this room, close to everyone, has called up that friend and said, I don't know what the hell to do. I'm not for sure, this is a sticky situation. And that's what you're doing. You're getting help with your boundaries, your boundary training. The key to that is the person you ask, trusting them, and believing them, and recognizing how they do boundaries in their own life to know if it's going to be a good gauge for you as far as the person to lean into to help navigate your boundaries. So this is the first part. It's on your page number 2 where there's some fill in the blank options. So the whole idea between Sari's book and her training, which spoke to me so well, is that there are these 7 patterns where we deny our boundaries that we fall into. So the first step is beginning to recognize what your pattern is. So these are the first 3. So workaholic, caretaker, protector. So workaholic might say, I'm too busy doing really important things. I gotta get this done. This is the top priority. The caretaker will say something, which is where I tend to fall, social worker, therapist, right? Not a surprise. Other people are suffering. I gotta take care of them. I can't let them sit in that suffering. I gotta make it better for them. This one's the protector. I shield everyone and myself from knowing the truth. I lie to myself about living with an addict, a gambler, a cheater, protected from the negative parts. Did you guys get all that, by the way? For those who are writing? Okay.
May I back up? Will we be able to disseminate this PowerPoint to people that have attended today?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure. So if you don't get it or ever stop, we'll be sending this out.
Yeah, and I built time in to stop in conversation, so feel free to ask or tell me to pause. So the other 4, we've got sacrificer, lover, isolator, and number. So what a sacrificer might say, my religion or spirituality belief tells me I should do this. That's the top priority. The lover might say, he or she is more important than I am. They won't love me if I do that. Or they might leave me if I do that. I can fall in this category sometimes too, the isolator. I alienate myself to the point of loneliness. It's easy to negotiate when you're by yourself, right? You just got your own boundaries. You don't have to mess with some of the stuff that's out there. And the other is a number. I shut myself down by drinking, medicating, drugging, shopping, food, gambling. Mine sometimes is TV. Binge watching is really easy with Netflix. I love it. Sometimes it's a good mental break, but sometimes it's a checkout. So those are the 7 patterns that help us ignore our boundaries and become unattuned to them. So, I'm not going to force you guys to share all of this because we're just doing a luncheon, but I would encourage you to take a few minutes to reflect and write down which pattern or patterns you relate to. And I'm going to flip back to some of the language so you guys can see. I'll flip back to the other one. And maybe you even recognize some of the things you say that maybe aren't these exact quotes. And it might be good for you to write those down for yourself too. We'll talk more about this a little bit later, but there's the other 3 again. that the part of boundary setting is awareness. And so when we did the breath earlier, that helps you kind of come into here, come into the now, taking a pause, not having to make a decision right away on a yes or a no. Yeah.
So those of us that are, I don't know, workaholics,
I was gonna say, is that a bad thing?
that's what I was getting ready to say, like, you've got projects and you've got to do stuff. So when you talk about putting a boundary around a workaholic, what does that look like? I mean, what?
So what the patterns, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but what the patterns are saying is it's not bad to have a good work ethic. It's not bad to stay focused on a project or a deadline. But what this is saying is I can use that subconsciously, right? A lot of us aren't thinking, oh, I'm gonna work a bunch of hours so I don't have to make these
To
decisions. or
avoid other
something.
things.
Oh, so
So
the work
if-
itself, it's if I'm using it to avoid.
So it's an,
That's
it's
what
an
I get out of
avoidance
it.
tactic. right?
Okay.
The other part is when we fall too much into these patterns, I'm trying to frame this in a way because I want you guys to hopefully unfold this for your own story
But-
today.
But sometimes some of those things are good for you, right?
So here's the piece.
Within moderation.
Yes, that's the piece, and that's where the awareness comes in. So one, knowing your pattern, where do you lean? And it also can help you stay away from your own awareness. So if you're working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're not gonna have a lot of time to pause and go, how does that feel in my body? Do I really wanna do that? Do I not wanna do that? So all of us, like when I first read this, I was like, yep, got that. So it's not a clear line. The biggest trick to this is awareness. And so what Sari says, which I agree with, otherwise I wouldn't be presenting it, is that these are 7 areas that really lend themselves to us ignoring our boundaries and being unaware of them.
Thanks for the clarification. Oh, crap, I've been doing my whole life wrong. Restart.
I still love you, Angela.
And this is the second part of this, is it says, if you live in this pattern too much, you will have some problems or red flags. So I didn't want to kind of unfold your guys' own stories, but what do you notice when you live in any of those patterns too long, or what might you think, or maybe you've seen it in other people?
I experience fatigue, if I don't stop. It was interesting, I was watching on the news the other day where like Microsoft and stuff are going to 4-day work weeks. And they're noticing that their productivity is going up 20%. I found that very intriguing.
Depression, you can fall into depression very easily if you overdo any of those things.
Yeah.
I was gonna say health issues, but
Oh, yeah.
kind of the same.
Migraines.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of them that I noticed for me is sometimes I haven't talked to people for a while, or I really am binge watching shows. I'm like, life was happening. Like, it's almost disorienting. Like, life was going on outside of here, and then I get up for work on Monday, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's still happening. So those are some things I noticed for me. So thank you guys for sharing. And if any pop up for you, of course, it's interactive. It's much more fun for me when I get to interact. So, Sari has her own story with this, so I've put my story in. Inner conflict with your compass, big and small rebellion. So this is a picture I took. I was working at a nonprofit. I was a program manager. I worked 6 days a week. 2 of those were half days, But when people walked in with crisis, we had to be ready to drop whatever we were doing. So if I was putting a program together, I had to shift gears into my therapy brain and help them. So I couldn't commit to anything in the evenings. I couldn't really do, there was a board I wanted to volunteer on. I was told I couldn't do that because I needed to make sure I was available for the program, for the services we offered. So I hit this point and I was like, my anxiety was just so high, and I got this email. It was from the Mid-America Buddhist Association. I have no idea how I got on that email list. I have no idea how that ended up in my inbox. That weekend they were having a retreat out by St. Louis. And I said, All right? Clearly how I'm doing it is not working. So I went, I know enough about Buddhism to be dangerous, and on top of that, it was a silent retreat. And that was really uncomfortable. So this is the part where when you are denying your boundaries or avoiding your boundaries or not listening to your boundaries, you will hit a hard stop at some point. So it says boundaries come from your inner self, your true self, your wise self, a self that must be heard by you. So that I think this is really powerful. So you guys just take this and I'm going to read it to you and just notice what happens. You may reach a point when you must stop sacrificing, working, caretaking, fixing, numbing, isolating, loving, or protecting. And this is where my stop came in. It was a total rebellion. I had nothing left to give because I was giving it all in one place. I couldn't create friendships. I moved to a new area. So I was trying to create friendships and a community for myself, and I couldn't. I worked with my community. And so eventually it comes up and you get full. And so I put my pick right. Stop. The hope is through some of the information you're getting today, you're going to start understanding some flags for yourself before you hit the big stop, is my hope. But like I said, this is structured in such a way where it's more interactive for like about a 3 or 4 hour. And so unfolding stories during luncheon is a little tricky. So hopefully we're going to get you with some information that's going to be helpful to you. Okay, so now we're on page 3 in your guys' handouts. So we've kind of talked about this a little bit. So what are some symptoms you may experience? So I'm going to list some of them up here. There's blinks on your page for you to be able to write these in. But like you guys talked earlier, and I shared, there may be other ones that you experience. So these are just some ones that have come up. Not sleeping. When the anxiety gets too bad because you got so much on your plate, it's hard to fall asleep. Running away. I'm cutting everything off. I'm going away for 2 weeks. You know, Sari tells a story. She was working for a nonprofit in California, and she was basically doing 3 people's jobs. She took off to Washington and never went back. And so now she lives in Washington State. So we're hoping that we, in a way, I can help you guys get to a place so that's not your hardest stuff. Drinking. That kind of also, so from a neurological standpoint, it's a depressant, so it regulates your nervous system, right? So then if the anxiety's up, well then, I get this depressant that kind of regulates.
But that doesn't necessarily have to be alcohol either. It can be soda, all those kind of different things, correct?
Yes, because our brain is set up in such a way, like, how am I going to survive this? We're geared for survival, we're geared for connection. And so then the question comes, how do I soothe? So when we get anxious, boy, those carbs and sugars sound really good, right? I mean, so that's not uncommon, especially if it's anxiety or even depression. Like, it's a way that we're trying to basically feed something in a way that we keep feeding, but it's not really feeding what we need. Great point. High-risk behavior, like car racing, motorcycle racing. I am too scared of things to really call it this category. I have a fear of heights, and pain, so that kind of takes me out of that one. Depression, anxiety can often be a symptom of this because you're going against what is your own inner knowing of your yes and your no. So, like she says in parentheses, it's not always true, but it is worth a pause to ask, is this a part of my story, why I have my depression and anxiety? And a piece for this that's outside this presentation scope that I share with a lot of people is I'm really a big mindfulness meditation person, and I say that I fall off the wagon and then my life gets crazy and then I'm like, what am I not doing? Oh, got it. So on this spectrum, so we look at anxiety over here and we look at depression over here. So depression is usually focused on past. What did I do? What didn't I do? How did I feel myself? How did I feel others? Lots of things like that. The anxiety is really future. Like, what's going to be coming down the pipe? What am I going to be doing? So if we move it towards the middle, right, oftentimes we can start to notice symptoms decrease, and then we become mindful in the moment. So when we're in the moment, we're not in the past, and we're not in the future. So I would encourage you, if that's part of your story, to check your boundaries and ask what's going on in your thoughts and if you're being mindful. And we're going to talk about some self-care stuff later on in the slides. I keep saying later, and I'm like, when was that? Okay. So as I kind of shared those, right, they don't have to be your story. They're not necessarily how you experience them. These are some common things. So I don't know if anybody's willing to share or even has noticed what happens with you when you ignore your yes and no.
Her eye twitches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get a gut feeling like I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have committed to something that.
I cried.
A lot of physical
I cry.
stuff, and I cry.
I shop a lot.
You always look great though.
One of the things I can do is I'll go into catastrophizing mode. I'll be like, oh my God, like this is just like, I'm in the mud, it's not changing, I'm in the cement, it's not gonna be any better, which then kind of can wrap me into some of the depression types of things. So just something to kind of think about for yourself. You know, do some of these resonate with you? And then being curious about them. Is that related to my boundaries, or is that something else? Because if you're not sleeping, that might be sleep apnea. I don't know. I didn't get medical training. But I would say be curious and ask the question. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys some time to fill this out. And maybe take some breaths. And you can share if you want, but I'm not going to pressure you to share. So this is about the part of the boundaries that are self-care. So I want you to take some time, fill it out. This is page 4. Someone hasn't found it. Oh yeah, that's a fantastic question. What do I mean by self-care? I love it. Thank you. So, self-care can mean a lot of things, right? So sometimes going and getting nails done feels like, okay, I'm taking something for myself. And this is really an interesting line of, are you falling into that number piece, or are you doing self-care? So what I would encourage you to think about is anything that you think of as self-care, is it allowing you to feel joy, to feel relaxed? And as a therapist, I would be doing a disservice if I didn't share this part of self-care, is sometimes it's not about going outside and doing something. It's really about sitting with ourselves and our emotion and letting it go, letting it flow. You know how powerful it is to be kind to yourself when you're not having the desired emotions.
So here's this scenario. Put myself out there. So normally, I get my nails done before we have KDOT lunches. And yesterday, I had a project due, and I just like, I'm at the end of my rope. I'm not getting my nails done. Like, but I enjoy getting my nails done, but I'm just like, so at that point, are you just so far off bounds that?
So where you mean like you're at the end of the rope, you mean call it a day? Or you're at
Well,
the
kind
end
of
of the
like
rope?
a day, because when you go to get your nails done, even though I enjoy it so much, it's like a commitment. It's like a 2-hour commitment. And I'm like, I'm not spending 2
I'll
hours.
pick you up with Color Street and it's 10 minutes and you're done. And there's shopping involved, so it means all kinds of things.
There you go.
And helping small local business, usually women owned.
There you go. So when you get to that point, do you go ahead and make the decision, like, no, I'm just gonna carve it out even though you feel like you have nothing left? Because I'm sure I would have felt better today if my nails were done, but, you know, I only have so many hours in the day.
I think one of the best answers that come to me is being curious. So if you sit there and you go, man, I remember what that was like getting my nails done last time. I just gotta sit there. I don't have to do anything.
Oh, it's
that
lovely.
feels good.
No.
Okay, I might feel tired, but I know when I get there, I know what I'm gonna feel like.
Oh, I didn't go that far.
One of the things that I do, like, so I run. I'm not a fast runner, I'm not a long distance runner, but I put one foot in front of the other, slightly faster than a walk pace. And some days I don't feel like doing it, and I know at the end of the day, I'm like, you know, I sit for most of my job. So sometimes it's about going through and going to that self-care piece. Because when I run, nobody can get a hold of me. I just get a bee, I usually go outside. So it's sitting with that and questioning, okay, am I gonna get more joy from going home and just resting and laying down and just, had a long day, rest is good?
Netflixing.
Did you go home and rest after that?
Or is it, I'm gonna push through and get my nails done? So, it comes, that's the piece of the awareness, being curious. It's like we're kind of learning ourselves in a different way, sometimes for the first time. So does everybody feel like they had some time to at least make some headway with this a little bit? Okay. So how your compass works, and we've covered some of this already, but like the boundaries are made of your yes and your no. Using them for everyday decisions, relationships, throughout your life. This is a really interesting question, I think, is when you feel like times you don't have boundaries, but know they're always there. So what if you hear, I don't know, from your compass? What do you guys, what would you do with that? You check in, you're like, okay, I did what Abby said, I read Sari's book, I reflected, I know my pattern, still don't know. I don't know what my yes or my no is. So, I don't see anybody racing to
Make
answer
a
that.
list, yes and no.
Yeah, so what do you think that list helps you do?
Organize. Well, it gets things out of my head, first of all. But, I mean, if you have more yeses than nos, then it guides you.
Yeah, so you're helping you tune in, right?
Ah.
So it's always there. Find, if you get a don't know, like you came up with the list, your system might be different. Maybe it's sitting still for longer. So they're always there. I don't make a lot of guarantees or do those absolutes, but they're there. So your boundaries have one job. Their only job is to take care of you. Your boundary's not here to please other people. Every relationship has boundaries, and if they feel like they don't, then sit with that. Boundary setting is normal. And no, this doesn't mean they're not going to be emotional. It doesn't mean you're not going to have feelings about them. But what it says is that they're about you and your own knowing of yes or no. Once you get clear about your yes and no and you decide to go the opposite way, well, You get to choose that. But what I'm hoping is you'll have the information and your awareness to be able to make a more informed decision. So if you start having those other symptoms, you're gonna go, got it. I went against my no, or I went against my yes. I do want to speak a little bit to that boundary setting as normal. So I grew up in small town, rural Kansas. And you don't even have to be a rural person, but if you grow up in a culture, a family, a context where there is an understanding you're kind of responsible for other people's feelings, boundary setting can feel really selfish. Because there's been a culture brought up, if this is your story, that if someone's upset, I'm responsible for that emotion. And that is not true. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I wanted to point that out. The boundary setting is normal for those of us that might have relationships in our lives that sometimes get really sticky. And like I said earlier, like, I get boundary challenges all the time. Like, it's not like you reach the peak of the mountain and you're like, oh, this is crystal clear. I remember that. Abby said yes, said no. Okay, we've got this. It's changing because we're complex people. Our relationships change. The people that come in and out of our lives change. So I wanted to make sure I highlighted that for those of you that might be a part of your story. So, other people and our boundaries. They don't maintain your boundaries. They're not responsible for your boundaries. You are. I think this one's really important. People show you how strong your boundaries need to be. And sometimes we'll try to manipulate your boundaries. What I want to say with this piece too is this doesn't mean people are bad. It doesn't mean they're horrible people. They'd be horrible, manipulative people, right? There's a great book. It's called The Dance of Anger by
Harriet,
Lerner.
and she's from Lawrence, by the way.
She's from New York. But
Oh,
I think she lives in Topeka now, but maybe
she
she
does?
moved to Lawrence now.
Is it Topeka or Lawrence? Do you know?
Topeka.
I think she's in Topeka.
Her son Ben has been writing books too.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's gotta be
Yeah.
interesting.
And she worked at Vinegar for a long time.
Yeah.
So.
She has a lot of her books are like Dance of.
Right, yeah.
And so the one with Dance of Anger that talks, did you say something?
There's a great quote by Maya Angelou that hangs on my refrigerator. When people show you who they truly are, believe them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So that was Harriet, who is it, Lerner?
yeah.
Yeah, because I'm gonna have Lisa put a snippet in the newsletter.
So one of the things she says in her book about the Dance of Anger, and I think this is what's really important because it's not an us-them scenario, because I feel like when we get into us-them, then we lose our sense of empathy. And if any of you have heard of Brene Brown, empathy is a really important connecting piece. So I don't want to get into that, but mostly what this is saying other people aren't responsible for your boundaries. You are. So one of the things Harriet Lerner says in her book, right? So when we change how we're functioning in a relationship, right? She calls it the hook. People want us to keep doing it the same way we did. So it's the hook to try to keep us in our pattern when we're trying to change it. Once again, doesn't mean they're bad people, right? I'm habituated. Like, I'm used to certain things in life. And so sometimes I have to check myself. If I'm getting frustrated with someone, is that my story? Or are they really doing something that's not good? So know that this slide right here about other people, that it's not about pointing fingers or people being bad. It's you taking care of yourself and understanding. And we'll talk about extreme boundary calendars here in a little bit. But it's about when people come at you, when you've got a no and they keep wanting a yes. So here's some questions. I think it'd be a really interesting discussion to have. Once again, I'm not going to try to pressure you guys too much. During my undergrad, I used to be a waitress, so I have the best timing of asking people questions when they have food in their mouth. It's like a requirement. So are boundaries part of your job? I I'm gonna say, of course they are. So these are some questions to look at your work environment, your family environment, your friendship. And I feel like friendship boundaries can really, for me, I say yes a lot to my friendship boundaries, and I'm learning that's probably not the best plan because I get really tired. So do boundaries at work tend to be clear? Are they unclear or undefined? What factors influence your answer? When you process or think about this question, and some of you are in leadership roles, ownerships, bosses, be curious about your own boundaries and how they're clear or undefined at your workplace if you're in a position that has some authority at work. And notice what your reactions are if your employees set boundaries that maybe you're like, we've got a deadline and I'm gonna have it in 2 hours, so you've gotta work those extra 2 hours. Notice what that brings up for you. When boundaries are being pushed, do you feel free to talk about the boundaries? Is that conversation accepted at work or with other family or friends? Is it encouraged? Boundary conversations can be really freaking hard. Really freaking hard. Because not everybody's gonna agree, and people are gonna have feelings, and feelings get messy. Is boundary assistance available for you when you need it? What would that be? I would encourage you guys, whether you do it today or at some point, getting together some people that you know are on your list that can help you, that aren't going to shame you or make you feel bad or villainize the other person, because that does really no service to anybody. Because we can set our boundaries, people can challenge them, and we can still care about them. Do give your boundary assistance to others at work. If so, how? If not, what impedes your ability to provide that support? So maybe some of you are in positions where you notice employees are getting exhausted or your coworkers getting exhausted. How are you engaging that? How are you not engaging that? What's informing that? What's not informing that? You know, this is a big part of just moving through life, is being curious about what our reactions are and what's going on with us, right? Doesn't mean it's always our story, but it's to be curious about it and sort it out. Did anybody have any thoughts or anything come up with some of those questions, or maybe more questions?
Well, one thing I found, because everyone knows I'm on therapy around 3,722, is that people do, when you start putting out there, I'm okay with this, or I'm not okay with this, and they feel, I mean, it is just almost like getting badgered. Like, there's been a couple of times I just had to walk away from the relationship, because there was just, my compass knew one thing, my heart was telling me something else, and anyway, it's just really hard.
It is hard.
And it's exhausting if people aren't open to you changing. So, I'm glad we're having this conversation. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, well, oops, I hit something. Oh, okay. So it sounds like in that example, they were showing you how strong your boundary needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And you got clearer and clearer.
It was amazing when you start following and focusing on your internal compass. Like, I hadn't done that forever because I'm working all the time. But as I'm slowing down and trying to be more mindful, it is, you're right, you do have that innate, I call it fire in your belly, your gut feeling, that type of stuff. But yeah.
I haven't always had that, fire in the gut feeling, but I'm kind of a person that wants to take a couple lots.
But your boundaries.
Now on, I just decide if they don't bring joy to my life, then I'm just done with them. I think I've had meditation.
Don't you feel better?
And maturity, yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
That you know what's important.
Because I was always a yes person. Yes, I'll be there. Yes, I'll be there.
And you know at this point, I'll be fine if they choose to do something different.
Yes.
But people get really angry when they're not able to manipulate.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Oh,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Preaching to the choir over there.
Yes.
Over here.
And I think, with that piece, when we set our boundaries, it's setting it from a place of heart-centeredness, not a punishment.
No.
Not a, you're gonna pay for this, but this is what I have the ability to do at this point. And I think that's really important. How many of you know Brene Brown? I think she's
Oh, I
great.
love her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's a vulnerability and shame researcher, and so one of the things she talks about is vulnerability. And what I would suggest is that all of this, if you have a relationship where you can have these boundary conversations, you're vulnerable. You don't know what that other person's going to do. So it does take a level of vulnerability to lead into a relationship to have these boundary conversations. Okay, so we kind of talked about this, and I love this one. Just so none of us are crazy. Setting boundaries can be really, really emotional, especially when they're relationships that are of the family origin or have been around for many, many years. It is really hard. So, this is on page 6. And so there's some fill in the blank options for you.
Oh, sorry. Done.
So some of the feelings as well as other people's feelings, which I'm gonna guess you guys have ran across either in yourself or others when boundaries have been a thing. Or maybe you didn't know there were boundaries at the time, but now you're recognizing them. Anger, rage, disappointment, frustration. Resentment is one that comes up for me when I've said yes too much. And then I get like, well, where are you at? Like, what's happening here? So I have to really check and tune in because that's not their fault, that's mine. That's my story. Grief. So, just to make sure we drill some of these home, your yes and no are not emotions. You may be emotional about them, they are not emotions. Boundaries are not emotions. Emotions will not guide you through the cyclone. If you feel sad and say, I don't want to feel this, so I'm going to say yes, you will pay for it later. Yes and no are the guidance.
That's a hard one. Boundaries are not emotions, and emotions will not guide you through the cyclone. That is very profound.
Yeah. When I first took this training, I was like, what? Like, this really sucks and this is hard. I feel a lot of emotions. I don't know if I want to say no. What if that friend that I've had for 20 years walks away? Well, the conclusion I came to for myself, if that's the case, well, what was the friendship really about? So while you feel emotions as you move through this or work to lean into this, or maybe people set boundaries with you and you have emotions about it because now they're setting different boundaries and you're used to them doing it a different way. Those are emotions about those things, but your yes and no are not emotions. Your boundaries are not emotions. You might have emotions around them. I would strongly say you probably almost always will anytime you're setting a hard boundaries. So, ways to care for feelings. So, this is on page number 7, and you'll have some fill in the blank options there as well. So let each person care for his or own feelings, unless it's a child, right? We gotta walk those kids of like, teaching them your emotions aren't you. They don't define you. They are energy and signals that guide you through life. So they move through, they're not defining of you. Or if it's a person learning how to set boundaries. So once again, watch your boundaries. If you run into a person you're trying to help with boundaries, and make sure that you're giving in the capacity that aligns with your guests, right? Emotions need time and attention. And I alluded to this a little earlier, that sometimes that's self-care. Like, I don't know if any of you guys have ever put on a movie and you're like, I just need a good cry. Like, I know my go-to movies when I'm sitting down and I'm like, I need a good cry movie, and I play it, and I just, CBS Morning News is really good for that, for their human true stories, by the way, in case you're looking for one.
On Sunday morning at 8 o'clock, CBS, is that the one you're referring
Yes.
to? Yes, they are very good.
And so they need time and attention. They're gonna come anyway. So if you try to avoid them out, they're gonna bite you in the rear twice as hard. And one of the examples, I know you guys are eating or just ate, but I'm gonna try this experiment with you guys. So think of your favorite food. Could be a dessert, could be a dish, could be a genre of food, maybe it's Mexican food. I want you to get it clear in your mind's eye. Your favorite food. Now I don't want you to think about it. You can never have it again. Don't even start salivating about it. You can never have it. Take it out of your mind. Don't picture it. What do you notice happen?
Start salivating. Gotta have it.
It's the same with our emotions. When we put them out here, they're gonna get bigger because we're spending so much energy putting them out here. So if we just let them be and move through, I have never, and I'm a therapist, and I've been in therapy, I have never met a person that stayed stuck in an emotion forever. Never. It's never happened. And I never heard a story about that. We got depression, we got anxiety, but it moves. It moves. So helpful ways to give attention and time to your feelings. This is the fill in the blank part on your page number 7. Meditate for 3 to 7 minutes. Now, I get a lot of flack about this sometimes when I share this with people because I can't. I got monkey brain. I got to think about the next thing. I don't know what's happening. I've got this list. I've got to get this to-do list. And a book I read one time said, if you don't have time to meditate for 5 minutes, you need to be meditating for 30.
So what is monkey brain?
So monkey brain is where you're like, phew, oh, I've got this over here, I've got that over here, the kids are here, I've got to pick this up, the car needs the oil change, I've got to do this list, I've got to write this bill. Boom, boom, boom. Did you just get outed? What did you look like this? So, a wise teacher once told me when I started doing meditation was, when you notice that distracting thought, celebrate that moment, because in that moment you had mindful awareness of the thought. So I would encourage you not to think about meditation as a way to block your mind and thoughts out. It's how to bring awareness. And meditation isn't always sitting still. I am not a person that sits still well. That's why sitting as a therapist, like now I take clients outside, we do outside stuff. Or if I don't move my body at some point during the day, I'm like, and I'm always chewing gum usually, except when I present. That's how I do bad if I spit it out. But I'm not a good sitter. Is it good for me to do that every so often? Yeah, I try to be still with meditation 3 times a week. But am I setting for 30, 40 minutes? Probably not. Have I had times in my life where I have? Yeah. So I would encourage you not to judge yourself, and that's the piece of mindfulness. It's not only being present in the moment, but also removing judgment of how you're showing up. Yeah.
So those of us that may or may not have OCD and checklist stuff, so it's hard when you set yourself up like, I'm going to meditate every day, and then if you don't do it, you're like, oh, failure. So do you just stop where you're at? Do you just find a couple of minutes? I mean, 'cause you don't need to be sitting on a pillow singing Kumbaya, but
No. I tell people, like, there's an app that I use that has a timer because I like the sound of the bowls, you know? Have you guys heard those singing bowls? So I like that sound. So there's an app I use that just has a timer on it where I can get that sound. It also has guided meditations. But set the timer on your phone for even 30 seconds. If you're aware of your breath for 30 seconds in one day, that's pretty huge in our society.
Angela, even if you're sitting in your car somewhere waiting for your child, just stop, turn the radio off, you know, just stop, and you can do it anywhere.
You speak about breath, that's one thing I enjoyed about my iWatch is there's a breath app that'll do it for a minute and it vibrates when you're supposed to inhale and back down. So, but I like your idea too of shutting off, just being in the moment.
Driving home, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of times I just shut the radio off just so it's quiet.
And you might get monkey brain when you're doing that, but oh wow, that was really awesome. You noticed you were in monkey brain.
As long as you don't forget that you're driving, you're okay.
Yes, that's true.
If you get so distracted and you get there and you go, I don't know how I
That's
got
good.
here.
where I am.
So I do, one of the things I do clinical hypnotherapy, and so I record some of the sessions with people for them to listen to. And so I don't listen to it when you're driving. Like if you fall asleep to it, fine.
Yeah.
I don't want you getting in an altered state driving. Journal about your feelings. I am not the greatest at this. Some people it comes really easy to. So when I throw these up here, take the ones that work for you, maybe you create your own. The thing I will say about meditation and mindfulness is there is scientific research that backs what it does to our body and our brain. We actually change the neural pathways in our brain. I think the study, it was 5 minutes every day for 8 weeks. They saw changes in the neural pathway in the brain. These other ones, that's the one that has, I mean, all of these have some sort of scientific piece behind them, I would say, because journaling, once again, can be a really mindfulness moment. You're slowing down enough to write stuff down. Create a collage. That's like a whole day process for me if I do that. Walk and listen to your feelings. There's a type of therapy modality that deals with bilateral stimulation. So if you think you're walking and you're thinking, you're doing some bilateral stimulation, which is causing your brain to function in a different way. And there's also fascinating research that has come out about trees and how they engage the calming system in our body.
Oh, they what?
Who said that?
They what?
They engage the calming part. So we have this thing, I don't want to get too technical, but we have this thing that's called our vagus nerve. So it runs down from our brainstem all the way down to the base of our spine. So it controls stomach, heart, brain, the emotional part of our brain. And so the vagus nerve is what's called our parasympathetic, part of our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our calming system. So we have two systems. When we get hijacked, the other system kicks in.
Yeah.
So we can engage that vagus nerve and that parasympathetic nervous system. We can bring it down. And so there's research that is saying the trees provide this engagement with our body. Draw. And here's, if you are an artist, I am not a drawing artist. If you are or if you're not, don't judge yourself. Like, if you are an artist and you try to get it right, throw it out the window. Just let it be the best that you can. Friend or colleague to talk. That can also kind of be part of your people that are helping you with that boundary counseling, right? And then see counseling. If it's too much, go get an impartial party. You know, I had a friend that was looking at doing life coaching one time, and he calls me and he says, "Hey Abby, how do I get life coaching and insurance to pay for it?" I said, "Go to a counselor." So it's not like every time you go to a therapist, we have to work on childhood issues, right? That's kind of my area of specialty. I like to dig deep with people and pull them out. But sometimes it's really about goal setting and how do I regulate this? How do I make these decisions? So counseling is a really good option. Yeah.
I've got a wonderful coach that I work with at my business that I currently do. It's Becky Eason, who's on our team. I was working with a gentleman years ago, and I just want to throw this out there to be very careful if you have a trained coach. I don't care how many certificates they have or whatever. If they start crossing over into the therapy, just kind of push back because they're not trained. I don't want to bag on life people, but I mean, don't you find that it would be hard if certain situations were to come up, and if you don't have the skill set, you could inadvertently maybe harm someone?
Well, I think that's where you check in with yourself, right? Because coaching isn't inherently bad. But know what you're working towards, and if it starts getting into some layered stuff, then maybe you need a little bit more than a coach. And coaches can be specialized, like business coach, life coach. I think they do a lot of different stuff. I think that one's a little harder for me to grasp. But they have writing coaches. They have, and then our sports coaches. So pretty much anything you'd be interested in getting help with, there's like a specialized coach for that area. Is what I found. So if you're clear, like I just need to know how to figure out this work thing, maybe a business coach is appropriate for you. But don't be afraid to seek a counselor if that's something that's helpful, an impartial party.
And I'm gonna give another plug for Becky also as well, because she also does strategic management, but we've also gotten to points where I've talked about stuff and she says, this is out of my realm, so I really respect that about her too, is that she doesn't try to be a therapist, even if she has stayed at the Holiday Inn Express.
Played one on TV.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just, and it just adds to my trust level with her, that I know she's looking out in my inner compass.
And Becky and I did a writing together on her blog of when therapy versus coaching. So maybe there can be a link in the newsletter about that. And then Becky's gonna, I think it's December 13th, so next month, she's gonna be the presenter. Is that right?
Yeah, she is. I don't know.
So that's another little plug. So,
Anyway, thank you.
because I don't know if we're gonna be able to get through all this. So, extreme boundary challenges. So, these are some things that can float into your life that can really also make boundaries really blurry. So trauma, additional stress, struggling with addiction. Addiction is like, there's no boundaries. People with mental health distortions, health conditions, wealth and power, authority. So most people recognize they have one or more extreme boundary challenges. Yours may not fall on this list, but these would be ones I would say that are most readily evident as far as the ones that are really challenging to hold your boundaries in.
Grief fit in there?
Yes, actually, well, she did originally have grief on there. And I took it out for this presentation, but yeah. And just asking yourself which ones maybe you're experiencing now or in recent years, and just being aware of them. And then it talks about extreme boundary challengers down there. Interestingly, when I went through this training, I found out I was an extreme boundary challenger in one of my relationships. That really sucked and was really hard. So we're not perfect in this. We can fall on either side. And from my experience, when I was like, oh my God, I'm that extreme boundary challenger, no! I was just trying to get a need met. And what my problem was, I wasn't asking for my need, so it was never her. And so it was me, once again, being curious about why am I pushing this person's boundaries so freaking hard? Because I had a need that I hadn't asked for that I really wanted met. And whether they can meet it or not is a different story, and that's another process. Okay. Amy, are we okay on time, or do I need to go?
No, you can keep, I mean, if people need to leave, they can leave and
Yeah.
go on.
So,
Super excited.
so this is on page number 9. So steps for extreme challenges. These are really good to maybe put up somewhere, so that way you have a go-to list when you're like, oh crap, this is really hard, this is really hard. Know your yes and your no. Be aware of your boundaries. That's the first one, tuning in. Be aware of yourself and what you need. And since we're all female in here, I will make this kind of broad, sweeping generalization that with women, it's really hard for us to express our needs. Because then sometimes we can be labeled as needy. I would suggest that does happen for men as well in a different way. And asking for what you need is also being vulnerable. Because people may or may not be able to meet them. Take care of your feelings. If you're angry, if you're sad, okay, you have a right to feel whatever feeling you have. They're yours. Now, what you do with them might be a different thing, but you're entitled to any feeling you have. So if anyone else tells you you don't have the right to be angry or the right to be sad, I call the BS card. Protect access to yourself. Define your time boundary. That's an interview with me.
What do you mean by that?
Well, professionally, sometimes it's really hard.
Yeah. That's why I
But
asked.
personally, sometimes what happens is I go into my people pleasing mode, right? So I go into that caretaker mode of like, I don't want to end the meeting with this person because I know that they really kind of want to hang out, but I know I've got to get ready for this presentation, and how am I gonna? And so I don't say I've only got a couple of hours or an hour to meet. So I just kind of I move into that caretaking of trying to appease, and then I'm the one that's stressed out trying to get stuff done. So defining your time boundary. Define your responsibilities. Be very clear about your financial responsibilities. This is a really important parentheses. It makes me chuckle a little bit because I would say I've moved a lot. I've moved a considerable length away from doing this, but challengers dump responsibilities onto others. I'm the only one that's helping out here. Why can't she step in and help out? I'm making that decision. I'm doing that. And that's where you go back to being clear on your yes and your no. If no one else gives, whatever it is, am I doing what feels okay for me? And then for the second part, on the bottom part of your page 9 there, on this next slide, is everybody good with this slide? If you don't listen to your yes and no and ignore your needs during a challenge, you will get symptoms. And it's different. I feel like it's a little more intense when you ignore your yes and no, just in general, and it would most likely be more intense when you ignore it when you're in a challenge. So, headaches, stomach problems, depression, sleep problems, some of the things we talked about before. So when you're in a challenge, it can really heighten those a lot. And this is where it's good to have your team of people or your therapist. Because you're gonna have emotions about some of this if you change how you've been doing it, and it's gonna be hard. There might be some grief with relationships that you really would like to still have around. You may also find yourself, this is where the patterning comes in, you may find yourself overdoing your pattern. And just like that sheet we did, and there'll be a sheet later that'll talk a little bit about self-care that you guys can fill out later, but during your challenge, and I hope this resonates with all of you, so tune this in. During your challenge, it is even more important to increase your self-care. If that is getting your nails done, if that's sitting with your emotion, if that's finding a resource to have someone sit with you or talk about it. The challenges are hard and they can kick you in the ass.
Yeah, and I do O for opposite. Yeah.
So one way I might suggest self-care, create your own sanctuary. Latin word, sacred place, Latin holy. This is a place for you. That's a little corner in your house in your bedroom, maybe it's your closet, maybe you've got kids running around and you're like, Mom is locking the door today. This is a hard no. I'm not encouraging you not to take care of your children, of course, put a disclaimer in there. But find your space. Find something where you can go that, at first I would encourage you to not let people in it. Let yourself get settled. Let you have that space for you. Each one of you deserve it. So this is the number 10. So it's, I think it should be your second to last page. I'm tracking right. So this is just gives you an opportunity to reflect on ways to strengthen your boundaries. So how can you improve your self-care? Identifying what you'd like to work on. 2 things you can do to make boundaries more visible in your workplace. 2 ways you can support others in establishing healthy boundaries. Once again, doing that one, making sure you're honoring your own boundaries. And then, what do you want to remember for today? So, time-wise, I would encourage you to, for right now, focus on number 5, so you write it down while it's fresh in your brain. As you guys are filling that out, or maybe you save it for later and you contemplate it, anybody have any questions or holy crap or does this rock my world today? I will rock our world today. I will tell you that Sari Gilman's website address. You can purchase books from her. She also had, I think it's monthly, an email list. I subscribe to that. She'll give you like little snippets of stay strong in your boundary today. Remember your yes and no's take care of you. And I'm like, yay, Sari. So they're just really nice to get, especially if you're in a challenge or you're struggling with your boundaries. So that is a very fast intro to boundaries without hopefully overwhelming you too much, but maybe giving you a little bit of insight to be curious. So.
Do you mind sharing your meditation app that you use?
Yeah, so I use Insight Timer. It's INSIGHT Timer.
And it's free, right?
Yeah, you can upgrade if you want to like download meditations.
There's so much stuff on
Yeah, and they have talks.
this. So do you use that? I have. My husband uses it a lot.
Yeah. There was something I was going to say about it, and I'm sorry, forgot. No, you're fine, you're fine. It'll flip back in if it's really important. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So, if you're new to meditation or you've been doing it a while, I encourage people, so there are some guided meditations that kind of are spiritually connecting, which I think have their place. But when you're working on being mindful and present, I encourage people to do mindfulness or body-based meditations to start off with. So getting used to yourself and being here. There's one on Insight Timer that's called the Body Scan. It's 30 minutes. So when I first started that one, I'd be like, now focus on the topic without judgment, just notice the sensations. So as I worked through it, one, I'd start falling asleep in the morning when I first started that. But then I could notice like how far, I got to the knee today. Woo! Oh, I got to, now I'm back down to the knee. Okay, I'm down to the ankle. So I kind of like it. It's kind of an interesting gauge, but being careful not to move into judgment. So
Years ago, we had been in a really bad car accident, and the counselor, my daughter and I were sitting, did a relaxation tape for me, and she had me bring a tape in, and she did it while in the session. Well, I didn't have the fresh tape, and so I would fall asleep, and then Phil Collins would come on. I would just like, I have to peel myself up because I didn't use a clean tape. It still cracks me up, but she goes, well, least you know you relaxed, because you went to sleep. So, and it kept me from sleeping too long.
Yeah. They also have a sleep timer on Inside Timer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's pretty nice.
What is
And
a
it
sleep
works.
timer too?
It works.
What does it do? I don't know.
It's just a meditation that you guide you to sleep.
Yeah, they have sleeping ones, but they also have like an actual sleep timer, so it'll shut.
Yeah, right, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
got it.
Yeah, but if I do a sleeping one, I'm usually out before.
Yeah, yeah, it's still going.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
The accountant learns new things.
Okay, I have a social worker husband, and you know, all these things, I'm, oh, yeah.
Us social
What does your husband
workers.
do?
Yeah, he's a social worker at Stormartville Behavioral Health.
Oh, wow.
He used to be a social worker at the Shawnee County Jail
Uh-huh.
and worked with suicidal inmates all
Oh
day.
my
That was fun.
That's hard work.
I appreciate my therapist. I mean, I know the guy earns every red dime when I'm in here. But I mean, I'm so grateful because it's a safe place for you to unload and you can talk and you don't get the judgments and it's just, so I appreciate therapists a lot. But I don't know, do you feel like as a therapist, do you do more self-care than the average person or?
It's interesting, when I started becoming a therapist, it forced me to do it, because I couldn't be present with people. I couldn't hold the space for what they were going through, what they needed to work through, because I couldn't do it. So it forced me. If I was going to honor what I wanted to be doing, I had to. Well, thank you all very much for coming today. I appreciate you giving this, and thank you for all your questions. And if you have any more, let me know.
So excited. I don't see, has anybody ordered